You know that morning routine you have? The one you do on autopilot every single day? Well, what if I told you that some of those familiar, harmless-seeming habits are quietly setting you up for a serious health crisis? Today, we're diving into some pretty shocking material about the hidden dangers that might be lurking in the very first hour of your day.
So let's just cut right to the chase, shall we? Could your morning routine actually be a hidden threat to your brain? I know, it sounds a little dramatic, right? But the research on this is startlingly clear. For a very specific group of people, the answer is a resounding yes. Okay, so here's the absolute heart of the matter. After you hit the age of 60, your body wakes up in a uniquely fragile physiological state. That first hour of your day, it's not just about wiping the sleep from your eyes. It's actually a high alert period for your entire system, and your brain is front and center in that vulnerable zone. Let's break down exactly what's going on.
All right, so let's dive into what we're calling the morning danger zone. We're going to break down exactly why your body is on such high alert the second you wake up. So think about what's happening inside your body every single morning. It's kind of a perfect storm brewing. First off, you haven't had any water for hours, right? So your blood is literally thicker, more viscous. At the exact same time, your body is naturally raising your blood pressure to get you up and moving. Now add to that the fact that blood vessels just get stiffer as we age, and suddenly you've got this high-risk scenario where a few simple everyday habits can have a massive impact. Okay. Next up, and this one is something so many of us are guilty of, the sabotage of stillness. This is all about how that gentle, slow start to your day can actually backfire and create a real crisis for your circulation. You know that moment? You sit on the edge of the bed, maybe check your phone. It feels like the safest, most gentle way to ease into the day. But the medical reality? Whoa, it's a completely different story. As you can see right here, what feels like a gentle warm-up is actually a trigger, allowing blood to stagnate and creating the perfect conditions for poor circulation and even dangerous clots. And this is the domino effect it kicks off. As that thicker blood just sits there, pooling in your legs, your brain is getting starved of the fresh oxygen and nutrients it desperately needs to start the day. So what happens? Your heart has to work way harder to try and compensate. You know that heavy, foggy feeling? It might not just be that you're tired. It could actually be your body telling you your circulation is struggling. And listen, this isn't just some abstract theory. There's a real story here about a 79-year-old man from Ohio. He kept describing this strange fog and his hands would tremble. He just wrote it off as, getting older. But his routine? He'd sit on the edge of his bed for a full 25 minutes just scrolling on his phone. Well, it turns out scans later revealed he had these tiny, silent injuries, microclots, in his brain. And they were all traced back to that period of poor circulation right after waking up. But here's the good news. The antidote to this is so simple. Seriously, you don't need to jump into a morning workout. Just a few moments of gentle motion while you're still sitting or lying down, flexing your toes, rolling your ankles, maybe a few shoulder shrugs. That's all it takes. When you do that, you're waking up your calf muscles, which act like a second heart for your body, helping to pump all that stagnant blood right back up to your brain where it's needed most. Okay, so being too still is a problem. But what about the opposite? Rushing. Well, that brings us to our next point, the shock to the system. This is how rushing, stress, and stimulants can create their own perfect storm. To really get this, we need to talk about something called the sympathetic nervous system. Just think of it as your body's built-in fight or flight switch. When you flip that switch on, everything revs up. Your heart rate, your blood pressure, and certain morning habits flip that switch at the absolute worst possible time. Now, just look at this dangerous cascade. Picture this. You wake up already dehydrated. Then, what's the first thing so many of us do? We reach for coffee, a diuretic, which pulls even more water out of our system. While you're sipping that, maybe you check the news or stressful work email, and bam, you get this massive surge in blood pressure that can just overwhelm older, less flexible blood vessels. This risk of rushing becomes terrifyingly real when you hear the story of a 76-year-old woman from Michigan. Her routine was simple: jump out of bed and hurry to the bathroom every single morning. She'd have these brief blackouts, but she just dismissed them as a part of getting older. But here's the frightening truth. She was actually having what are called silent mini-strokes, or TIAs, triggered by nothing more than those abrupt morning transitions. All right, we've covered being too still and being too rushed. Our final major risk factor is what we're calling the fuel and monitoring gap. This is all about the danger of starting your day on an empty tank and, well, flying blind.
See, skipping breakfast isn't just about feeling hungry. For an older adult, when your blood sugar is low, your body actually perceives that as a crisis. It goes into emergency mode. It starts pumping out stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which tighten your blood vessels and cause your blood pressure to spike. It also makes your blood thicker, and for those on medication, it can cause those meds to absorb way too fast, creating dangerous instability in your system.
And once again, the fix here is so simple, yet so powerful. We are not talking about some giant 4-course breakfast. The research is really clear on this. A small meal, just a cup of yogurt, a hard-boiled egg, even a handful of walnuts, is all it takes to give your brain the fuel it needs and to stabilize your entire system.
Okay, now for that flying blind part. This is a big one. A 78-year-old man from Virginia was absolutely convinced his blood pressure was perfect. Why? Because he only rechecked it in the evening when he was relaxed. But when his doctor asked him to check it first thing in the morning, the results were just shocking. A reading of 180/95. Can you imagine? He was living with this incredibly dangerous surge every single day, completely unaware, happening right in that high-risk window. So with all these dangers, what do we do? Well, this is where we get to flip the script. In this final section, Your Morning Reimagined, we're going to turn that morning gauntlet into a protective shield. And here it is, laid out plain and simple. This is your new blueprint. On one side, the risky routine. On the other, the protective one. Instead of that coffee on an empty stomach, how about a glass of water first? Instead of rushing out of bed, just 1 minute of gentle motion. Trade that stressful news for 10 minutes of calm. That prolonged sitting for just a few minutes of light mobility. And of course, a small meal instead of skipping breakfast. And a quick BP reading instead of just guessing. Every single one of these is a simple, powerful exchange. So here's the bottom line, the most important thing to take away from all this. These aren't just, minor lifestyle tweaks. This is preventative medicine. This is actively protecting yourself. The difference between a future that's been altered by something like a stroke and a life lived to its absolute fullest can literally come down to the small, quiet choices you make in those first few moments of the day. And that really brings us to the final thought. This isn't just interesting information, right? It's an invitation. It's a call to action. The knowledge you have right now gives you the power to change what happens next. So I'll leave you with a question from your future self. What will you do differently tomorrow morning?